Before nitoroke, mzee yake karibu ni rape. Nikatoroka nikaingia kwa bathroom. So that's when she locked me up in the bathroom. Bila nilifukia kwa bathroom nikakaa for 3 days.
This is Tina.
Hao watu walinifungia, walikataa kwa passport because really walikuwa wameshapewa passport, wakanifungia ndani kwa ofisi almost 1 month.
This is Jane. These are not their real names. We are protecting them for their safety. These two women do not know each other. They live in opposite parts of Kenya. But their stories almost mirror each other. They were both trafficked for labor.
And nilikuwa nimenunua vitu za watoto wangu nataka kuwaletea Kenya. They took it. I came Kenya empty handed. Na nilikuwa nimesave salary yangu karibu ya 3 months. They took it.
So yeye alikubali kunirudisha kwetu. But the moment walikuja kwa ofisi walinyang'anya kila kitu, walinyang'anya pesa yote. But walinirudisha.
Stories like these are not new. But they recently made headlines when this happened. The August explosion in Beirut, coupled with a collapsing economy from the coronavirus pandemic, left many migrant workers jobless and stranded. And stories like Tina's and Jane's were back in the headlines.
It was so frustrating from the beginning, but nilijipea roho nikisema I have kids, they need school fees, they need food, they need rent, no.
But why does this keep happening? How do workers from Kenya and other African countries end up in exploitative conditions in the Middle East? What makes East Africa a gateway for human trafficking, and can this cycle of abuse end? It is estimated that between 57,000 and 100,000 Kenyans live in the Gulf countries. There isn't much reliable data to show just how many Kenyans, and by extension, East Africans, have traveled to the Middle East for employment. One of the reasons for this is that most East Africans pursue informal jobs like domestic and construction work, and many of them fall prey to unofficial channels of finding employment. This was the case for both Tina and Jane.
First country ilikuwa Dubai, and then naweza sema agent wenye nilikuwa natumia walikuwa so reliable kwa sababu I trust on them, and ilikuwa my first traveling, but that agent alikuwa ametravel na one of my friends, 2 or 3 of my friends, so nilikuwa na rely on him kwa sababu walikuwa wametravel wakarudi mpaka Kenya, so nilikuwa na trust.
Tina worked in Dubai as a domestic worker for 2 years and 3 months, earning about 25,000 Kenyan shillings, which is about $250 per month, before coming back home. But she was back home for only 2 months.
Because that time I had my mom, she was sick, alikuwa amelazwa, and like pesa zote nilikuwa nafanya Dubai zilikuwa zinaenda kwa medical. So vile nilifika tu bado Kenya sikuwa na do yenye ningeza sema let me just settle down na nifungue ta biashara yangu. So I had to go back, nikaenda Qatar.
It's not uncommon for workers to hop from country to country looking for better opportunities. They are usually driven by the lack of employment opportunities back home, among other push factors. Once in Qatar, the second Gulf country for Tina, she quickly realized that the script was different.
The family in Qatar, they were Muslim family. They were so strict, they were lot in the house, and nilifika kama imefika mwezi wa Ramadhan. You know, wakati wa mwezi wa Ramadhan mtu unafanyanga kazi mpaka una time ya kurest. So mimi nilikuwa na shida nao cause me am asthmatic, ilikuwa inafikanga time wakichoma hizo vitu zao hizo bakur hizo. Mimi zilikuwa zinani affect a lot, but they never understand me. Like unapata wanakutuma wewe mwenyewe uende uwakishe hiyo kitu, nikianguka chini nikizimia. Like sometimes when you have asthma, you cannot be able to even to help yourself. Unahitaji mtu akusaidie either to give you the inhaler ama ajuvle anaweza kupeleka place yenye iko open, you can get a fresh air to breathe. But sometimes nilikuwa napata nimeanguka kwa room nimezimia, then I just wake up. Yani Mungu tu alikuwa ananisaidia. Nikaongea na agent wangu wa huku Kenya, nikamwambia nataka kurudi Kenya. Akaniambia tu kama unataka kurudi Kenya lazima ujinunulie ticket mwenyewe urudi nyumbani, au they cannot pay for you ticket. And nilikuwa nimenunua vitu za watoto wangu nataka kuwaletea Kenya. They took it. I came Kenya empty handed. Na nilikuwa nimesave salary yangu karibu ya 3 months. They took it. but I never give up. That's why I decide kwenda Lebanon, but nikasema this time around I'll be smart and fast na nikuwe sasa, this is my last country, but at least come with something out of it.
Jane's story is almost identical to Tina's.
So it was ilikuwa 2013. So hiyo 2013 nilikuwa Nairobi, nikakujiwa na agent akanielezea ninaenda huko Saudi Arabia, ati kuna kazi nzuri unalipwa around 50,000. So nilianza kuuliza marafiki, wakani encourage niende, but sikuambia parents. The moment niliambia parents wangu walikataa, walisema usiende huko. So nilidecide mimi mwenyewe niende.
Okay, let's pause for a moment. It's important to understand how this entire ecosystem works. There are agencies that connect job seekers to potential employers in the Middle East. These agencies are registered in Kenya and work with an agency in the receiving country. By September 2020, only 45 employment agencies had been accredited by the National Employment Authority in Kenya. Most of these agents are based in Nairobi. It is a big connection point where people from other parts of the country converge. Some of these agencies are corporate and have physical offices. Others are simply run by individuals. A registered agency will work with a middleman. That middleman will hire the services of another middleman. That cycle continues until in the end a prospective migrant worker is found. The problem with this chain is that migrant workers will be unable to identify the agent responsible for them.
You have to always realize that traffickers exploit confusion also. They exploit populations. When the populations are high, they are able to run their businesses without high risks of detection.
And it gets even more complicated. The registered agencies, which are already tough to regulate, are just one part of the problem. There are also dozens, if not hundreds, of unregistered agencies who do the same work. And they use the same tactics and often will hire the services of the same middlemen to recruit these workers. This is where most of the trafficking happens. Ideally, a recruiter should secure a job and facilitate the process using legal channels. But these unscrupulous agents will go as far as acquiring passports, visas, and other necessary documents on behalf of the job seekers. Many of them will hold on to these documents, leaving the prospective worker completely dependent on them and their process. In some instances like Tina's, you have someone with connections to agencies in the receiving country recruiting and selling these workers directly, treating them like a commodity. And now recruiters are going to rural Kenya to lure young jobless people.
And they traffic people just because they have understood the thread from the recruitment to the deployment in Saudi Arabia or whichever other country. And these are very, very popular, especially in the remote areas of this country.
This really hit home for Tina when she went to Lebanon in 2019.
Ilifika tu mahali alikuwa amenifikisha kwa ukuta, mpaka alikuwa na lock fridge, food anakupatia na kipimo, and usisahau sikuwa nimelipwa kuanzia mwezi wa kwanza, wa pili, wa tatu, kwa sababu kutoka Kenya nimesign contract nimeambiwa ni 400. Yeye kufika huko akaniambia ni 200. I went to the police at least, because mimi najuanga hata huku Kenya ukipatwa na shida, if you cannot find someone who can help you, the police can take you to the right place where you can get help. So vile mimi niliripoti kwa polisi, they ended up taking me back to the right agents, because I find out mwenye hata nilikuja naye Lebanon agent, nilikuja naye hakuwa agent, alikuwa tu muuzaji, like mtu wa hora. Amenunua kwa hora ingine akaniuza kwa hora mwingine, then hora huyu akanipeleka back to the real agent.
When Jane arrived in Saudi Arabia in 2013, her welcome was a full day of waiting at the airport, not knowing what was coming next. In the evening, the receiving agent picked her up. He did not speak English.
Sasa yule mwenye aliniweka wakaniambia nitoe nguo zangu zote, wakaanza kusearch, wanakutoa nguo yako one by one, mpaka panti zako za ndani, mpaka nywele ukishuka wanatoa hiyo ya bandu, wajue kama kuna nini, wanakusearch. So nikakuwa afraid, wakaniambia you just be free. hakuna kitu cha kufanyia. Then after that wakanipea nguo ya kuvaa. Sikuwahi ona nguo zangu pale walipeleka. So wakaniambia wewe ngoja hapa, si hapa pale ya kufanya kazi, tutakupeleka kwa nyumba nyingine. Nikamwambia mimi niliambiwa kuja kufanya kazi ya hoteli, si ya nyumba. So wakaniambia hapa kazi zote watu wanakuja kufanya ni ya nyumba. Wakanipeleka kwa nyumba nyingine hapo Shushu Konge. So kazi nilikuwa napewa, nilikuwa na mshahara saa 9 usiku, no food. Wanakuambia na unaenda unakamua mbuzi. So mimi nilikuwa naona hiyo maisha ni ngumu. Kuna chakula nilikaa hapo like 4 to 3 days. Sasa kaona maisha ni ngumu, wanipee chakula na lugha pia. Siwezi ongea nao lugha yoyote, simu pia walikunyang'anya. So nilijaribu kutoka. Kasema kama maisha ni ngumu kwa nitafanya aje, nikatoka. So the moment nilitoka, nikaona kuna pale nitaenda, hiyo kambi si yangu, nikazurura tu, nikarudi, nikapata kama nimerudi tu kwa December ndo nilitoka. Nikakaa. Vile waliona nilirudi, walinichukua, wakaniweka kwa room, wakanifunga kwa room wiki moja.
She was later transferred to another home where she was still working in deplorable conditions.
So nikajaribu kupigia agents wanipeleka huko. So vile walisikia nilipigia agents, baba mwenye hiyo nyumba alinichapa akanifungia kwa nyumba. So hapo pia nilitoroka nikaenda nje usiku. Nikapatikana na mapolisi wakanipeleka kwa jail. So vile walipeleka hapo, bahati mzuri nilikuwa mtu anachangamka, nilikuwa na contact ya huyo baba. Nikapeleka huko, akaitwa na akakuja. So yeye alikubali kunirudisha kwetu. But the moment walikuja kwa ofisi walininyang'anya kila kitu, walininyang'anya pesa yote. But walinirudisha.
According to the 2020 Trafficking in Persons report released in June, Kenya reported identifying 853 victims of trafficking in 2019. Majority of them were subjected to forced labor. This was a significant increase compared to the 400 victims who were identified in 2018. Through the National Employment Authority, 40,592 Kenyans, majority of them being women, are reported to have registered to migrate to Saudi Arabia, while 3,903 registered for other Middle East countries. Kenya is a country of origin, transit, and destination for human trafficking. A group of civil society organizations have been mapping out routes of transit, travel, and destinations across the region. For instance, a victim can be trafficked from Ethiopia into Isiolo. Another one can be taken from Dadaab to Garissa and then Mwingi. On the western side, victims are trafficked from rural areas of Uganda into Kampala, driven to the border town of Malaba, then to Kisumu. From Tanzania, victims are moved from Dar es Salaam to Namanga. All these interconnecting routes will lead victims to Nairobi, where they exit through the Jomo Kenyatta International Airport. But due to increased vigilance at JKIA, another layer is added to this sophisticated plan. Many victims are now moved to Mombasa as the final exit point.
Remember, with the development of the airline industry, Mombasa has continued to be as an end destination to airlines. Mombasa wasn't like that before. Actually, everybody flying out of this country was coming to Nairobi to fly out. But then certain airlines, a number of airlines introduced destination points at cost in Mombasa in particular. Therefore, instead of all crowding here, and in the reality that traffickers are aware that JKIA is far more monitored and tracked in many organized crime situations, they avoid where they feel their chances of detection are higher, and they use the lesser ones. I can tell you today as we speak, there are many who are being trafficked through Arusha in Tanzania, through Dar es Salaam, through Kampala. Kenyans going through those exit points. Why? Just to minimize detection.
In the latest report, Gulf states and other countries in the region are the leading locations of exploitation. Saudi Arabia leads by a mile. A majority of victims are recruited to work in the domestic sector, commercial sex work, and the hospitality industry. But even for some domestic workers, they still have to deal with sexual advances from their bosses.
Before nitoroke, mzee yake karibu ni rape. Nikatoroka nikaingia kwa bathroom. So that's when she locked me up in the bathroom. Bila nilifukia kwa bathroom nikakaa for 3 days. And then step mama wake ndiye akakuja akasema kama hautaki huyu msichana mfungulie umwache aende uende umdrop hata kwa street. That's when nilitoroka.
But the challenge nilipata hapo, huyo baba mwenye alikuwa ameniajiri hakuwa mtu mzuri. Yeye alikuwa anataka mtu saa zile huyo mama yuko, yeye anakuja rumbali huko, anataka kufanya kulala na wewe, anakushika.
But are there laws that protect them?
Our labor laws do not have segments on, migrant workers, external migrant workers, because remember it applies on locals, yeah. But we have also we also have recruitment agencies and acts that also guide them on getting into relationships and binding agreements with migrant workers, and that is now what is provided for locally. We have bilateral agreements, yeah, and bilateral agreements are they are designed to protect labor migrants in countries of destination. Apparently, we have only 3 with Saudi Arabia, we have with United Arab Emirates and Qatar.
Many Gulf states observe the kafala system, which is used to monitor migrant laborers who work primarily in the construction and domestic sectors. The system requires all unskilled laborers to have an in-country sponsor, usually their employer, who is responsible for their visa and legal status. This system allows employers to take away their workers' travel documents and abuse any international labor laws without fear of legal repercussions. Qatar is one of the few countries that has abolished it.
The problem is always when they are sent, everyone forgets that they sent someone to those countries until they come back, yeah? If there can be a system to monitor and track where these ladies are, when they come to us, we play our role of ensuring, they are safe, they are communicating to us. But now look at the percentage of those who report to us before they travel, and the latter.
And basically, these cases are never followed up by anyone, because these are private treaties, private agreements between the girls, the agents, and the employers. But almost 90% of those girls I've spoken to, I've interacted with, they claim that they are never sufficiently informed about some terms of service on the ground. Until they get there, they realize some of them are deprived some of the basic needs that they would not think about. Things like denied food, denied phones, passports immediately confiscated from them. So the breakdown of communication, they cannot talk back to their families in Kenya.
The Kenyan picture isn't very different from that of other East African countries.
We may think we have a problem. Our neighboring countries, name them Tanzania, name them Uganda, name them Rwanda, name them Burundi, name them South Sudan, are in deep crisis. Let me say what enables us to deal with this matter, at least to the standard we are dealing with it now, is we have managed possibly to grow our economy to a certain level where people can start focusing on what brings us down or what breaches what we need to see as human beings.
What is the government involvement in countering trafficking? These Kenyans demonstrating outside the consulate in Beirut alleged having received inhumane treatment from the consulars.
We also have very few labor achieved. We have 3 right now, yeah? 3 labor achieved. So looking at the number of Kenyans who want to be served in the Gulf because we actively, exporting labor, then is it even sufficient for them to handle all these Kenyans that want to be assisted? Yeah. Also, that again informs the issues of, do they have even data of all Kenyans who are migrant workers if they are still there? And then how are they also being addressed in the embassies? And how are they also being, being handled as Kenyans?
At the policy level, I think I have to be fair to the government. The Anti-Trafficking Act was only enacted in 2010. They have set up a secretariat. They have set up an advisory committee. There is a national referral mechanism framework which has been developed and still under review. They have a victim assistance fund, money that is set aside by the exchequer to support victims of trafficking. But again, it is a process and a journey. I find a lot of goodwill personally from the government side. They are really willing to work with others to promote and improve on the service delivery for both victims, but also ensure that we continue to prosecute properly for the traffickers.
The Counter-Trafficking in Persons Act of 2010 criminalizes sex trafficking and labor trafficking. It prescribes penalties of 30 years to life imprisonment, a fine of not less than 30,000 Kenyan shillings or both.
One of the key parameters that can help us to get further than we are today is every security officer, every policeman and woman need to have knowledge about the new act on counter-trafficking. I can assure you I don't even think a tenth of the police officers are aware of this act. It is not that alone. It is also about the prosecution. At the prosecution level, not all prosecutors are grounded with the act on anti-trafficking. We have a big responsibility to educate, to train, and to empower.
Without any possibility of getting justice or compensation for the experience, Tina and Jane, like many Kenyans who fallen victim to this system, can only warn other vulnerable job seekers.
Msikuwa uko ushago, agent wako wako Nairobi na mnapanga mpangilio ati ya kutravel. You have to be step by step na huyo agent hapa na hapa. Ndio kitu yote yenye anasema, you have to be sure of it. Ameambiana nini yenye hujui, lazima Kenya anaambiana huko kwa Arabuni ama papers zenye anatuma huko ukwe umesoma umeelewa, hata kama umeandikwa kwa Kizungu na uelewi Kizungu, tell him to transfer her to translate. At least uelewe ndio usiku unajisainia kitu yenye umeenda kujifunga.
The adults, in my view, even children who might have been trafficked and stayed under abuse for long, might also grow up to believe. They would believe that it is actually like you are grabbing them from an opportunity that was empowering them, instead of looking at it in the context of they are being abused and that their future should have been fairly bigger and different. They feel that they are being deprived of an opportunity to better their lives and help their families. How do you force people to see things your way, and yet you're not offering an alternative which is better than what they find themselves in?
By September, about 100 Kenyans had been repatriated back to Kenya. The evacuation process is still ongoing.
Much of the effort was mainly from other actors, the civil society organizations, NGOs, international NGOs, also individual Lebanese joined the effort. And more practically, there was one specific young girl who mobilized so much resources through her friends and supported in the evacuation of the Kenyans from Lebanon.
Following a CNN report that was published on July 28 detailing the alleged abuses of migrant workers by the consulate, Kenyan embassy in Kuwait sent delegates to carry out investigations in Beirut. The matter is still pending.